Hey, it's Tiqqle, and in this video we're going over the 8.2 Elemental Shaman PvP guide. You can find it on Icy Veins already, but here's the kind of walkthrough video. And I also want to let everybody know I stream almost every day except for Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitch and YouTube. Make sure to check out the links below. Make sure to follow me on both platforms, guys, and let's jump into it. This is the game plan. We're going to go through a too long didn't read version of the guide, which will be a very quick breakdown for those people looking to just get the facts and get out. Then we're going to go over Azerite powers. We're going to get into Azerite Essences, which is brand new to 8.2. We're going to go through talents, PvP talents, and trinkets. By the way, trinkets is actually a really big deal. And then we're going to go through how to do damage and burst damage. So let's get into it. For stat priorities, LE now mainly prioritizes versatility. It's even in PvE, so we're stacking that as much as we possibly can, with the second stat being critical strike. After that, we go into haste and then mastery. This is actually good news because not only will we be maximizing our DPS by going versatility, it'll also be maximizing our defense, which is great news for people trying to PvE and PvP. The first one is the too long didn't read version of the guide. I'll just go over the facts. Azerite power, you need 3 Lava Shock, 3 Igneous. Azerite Essences, you really want blood of the enemy if you're going for the one-shots, and you need it at rank 3, which requires a lot of farming. Or you go Crucible, or a backup with Iris. Next, for miners, conflict and strife will be required for LEs. The versatility is our #1 stat, and it's just going to be very, very, very crucial for PvP because being stunned or being slowed even procs that versatility, which is going to increase our damage and survivability by a lot. Unbound Force will be giving you a crit window that will be pretty massive, which you can line up with the major essence. Now, for your talents, this is the breakdown. It's pretty much the default build. Take these numbers, plug it in, and run with it. Now, there's a variation there between Surge of Power and Primal LE, but that's that. PvP talents is pretty basic. Sky Fury for the crit damage, Lasso for the huge damage and stun, that's undispellable, and then grounding usually. Trinkets, you want the Leviathan's Lure, which is from the second boss of the new raid, Harbinger from Crucible of Storms, or the Cyclonic Blast, which is from Rustbolt. Now, how to do damage, just a quick rundown of this. Really what you want to be doing is pre-casting Stormkeeper, getting that Sky Fury up, using a Lava Burst to open with, then your Essence. Then, if you don't think you're going to get kicked, go into Lasso. At the end of the Lasso, you want to Earthshock and Lightning Bolt. And if you also are running Primal, you want to Meteor at that same point. And then repeat the Earthshock Lightning Bolt combo as you can. And that's kind of the burst window. Now let's go ahead and slow it down for everybody and go through all the facts of each of the different sections of this guide, piece by piece. Next up is Azerite power. So the Azerite powers that are really important for you to get, it's still Lava Shock, similar to Season 1 BFA. This is now and back to being, even in Season 2 it became it, is the most important. Making sure you have 3 Lava Shock traits is critical. What does that do? Basically, your Flame Shocks will generate stacks of Lava Shock. Once you get up to 20 stacks of Lava Shock, that'll get you the maximum amount of punch added to your base damage of Earthshock. When it crits really freaking hard. So that's just to keep in mind. So this is definitely the #1 trait. #2 trait is Igneous Potential. This will increase the proc rate your Flame Shock will give for instant cast Lava Burst, which is very good for Maelstrom generation as well as just pressure. Making sure you're using those procs as well is really important. Igneous Potential also increases the damage of those Lava Bursts, so those meatballs be slinging, and you want to make sure they're as powerful as possible. So getting that combination of Lava Shock and Igneous Potential is very critical. 3 of each is going to give you the most pressure possible. As a backup trait, Natural Harmony is okay, but it's really not desirable. It does give you secondary stats like Haste, Crit, and unfortunately Mastery, but it doesn't give you versatility, which makes this not that useful in general. Sure, Haste makes things more fluid, but in general it's not giving you the damage pumping stats that you really require. Now, a new trait is Undulating Tides, which has a on hit potentially going to do additional damage proc, which has been doing a lot in raids. It also has, if you fall below 50% health, you get an Absorption Shield. Unfortunately, this Absorption Shield has been nerfed by 75% in PvP, but even so, maybe this is going to be viable for stacking as a defensive trait against teams like RMP, or other teams that will definitely train the Shaman. Could be useful, and it might be a good backup trade as well instead of Natural Harmony if you can't get Igneous Potential and Lava Shock. Into the second tier of Azerite traits. Really, Unstable Flames is desirable because it will increase your crit rate, and it's not going to be modified. It's going to ramp up and then it'll be done. Overwhelming Power is okay, but the problem with it is that the haste ramps down so quickly, especially when you're taking damage, so that can be not that great. Another viable option now that versatility is so desirable is On My Way. It's not on as many pieces, but it can be pretty good. These are all kind of secondary stat Azerite traits. Backup options to these are Gut Ripper and Heed My Call, being more on hit damage procs. These are not as good as the others, but if this is the only option that you have to work with, I recommend these. There are a few that provide mastery, movement speed, that stuff, or healing. I do not recommend going that option. Damage is so high right now, you need to be doing as much damage as possible. Next are Azerite Essences. These are new as of 8.2, and we'll go over the majors first. You get 1 major and 3 minors. One of the minors has to be attached to the major, but that's fine. Number 1 is probably going to be Blood of the Enemy. Now, it's important to note that this is not very useful under rank 3. There are other ones that are better at rank, below rank 3, but rank 3 is really where we're going to draw the line and put the bar. Now, Blood of the Enemy, what does it really do? Well, it puts out an AoE damage around you, and anyone tagged with that damage has a 25% increased chance to be critically stricken by you. And when you crit, that damage goes up by 25%. Your crit damage goes up by 25%, which is pretty unique other than, the fact that Sky Fury also does that. So this has a great synergy with Elemental Shamans and their high crit damage builds in general. So it is very, very good. The minor on it is not that good, giving you haste after a stacking buff, but that's fine. You're really using this for that big damage opportunity here. Now, at rank 3, it's also 1.5 minutes, which is great, down from the 3 minutes that it is at rank 1. And this is really something that can lead to one-shots. We're seeing over 150k Earth Shocks when people are using this. Basically, what they're doing is they're lining up their burst so that they use Blood of the Enemy on the target, and then they use a huge Earth Shock and Lightning Bolts, and they're critting. They have a very, very high chance to crit, and when they're critting, they're doing plus 25% damage, which is insane. So this is very, very good. Can be viewed as a little gimmicky, but it's still very strong. Now, another alternative to this is Crucible of Flames, which you rank up based on your Heart of Azerite level. Now, what it does is it's an on use every 30 seconds, where it does damage to the target, and then at rank 3 it's also applying a dot to that target, which does ramp up by 100% each time up until I think it's 3 stacks. So it does up to 300% damage of what it does baseline. So you're ramping that up and using that, and at rank 3 it has 2 charges. This is actually a great way to get a lot of burst out, a little bit more so than Blood of the Enemy. Blood of the Enemy is going to be augmenting your damage and increasing it. Crucible of Flames is going to provide another source of damage. So for example, if you're bursting with your teammates and you don't have a juicy Earth Shock, you can use Crucible of Flame to do very high damage. We're talking 60, 70, 80k, and then it's applying a damage over time effect, which is also ticking very strong. It is a very good option. The minor on this is not that great. Your spells and abilities have a chance to basically put a dot on the target. It's okay, it's just not amazing. The on use is really good. Now, the Focusing Iris is the laser beam you're seeing everyone use, which they press it, and it does a frontal cone for 3 seconds, doing a lot of damage, probably like 100k damage, which is pretty nutty. And then the secondary on this, or the minor, is giving you a haste, stacking haste buff. Now, this is a good option, but it can be kicked, so you will have to make sure that there's no kick, stuns, interrupts, CCs that could go out to be able to use this. People are definitely using this, and it is devastating. And lastly, Conflict and Strife. This will be probably one that you're going to go in many circumstances as an LA Shaman against certain compositions. It teaches you PvP ability, so it's going to give you Lasso, which is whatever. But what's most importantly is that this says, while you are stunned, the defensive benefit from your versatility is doubled. Because we're stacking versatility, this is going to be incredibly good for us to reduce damage. That means when rogues are going on you, it's kind of countering that huge damage that rogues are going to be pumping out with your versatility, which is a very big deal. Then it says dispelling, interrupting, and applying loss of control effects gains a stack of Strife. Versatility granted by Strife is doubled for the next 5 seconds. So this is all around versatility, and that's our #1 stat right now. And it's this is probably going to be chosen in most circumstances, to be honest. I think that Blood of the Enemy is the YOLO method. Conflict and Strife is going to be the dedicated, defensive technique. So you kind of have the spectrum here. Onto the minors. Now, these minors can synergize pretty well with the majors. Keep in mind what we talked about for majors. Now, the first minor that I think will be extremely useful with Blood of the Enemy is the Unbound Force. Now, what does this do? Why do we care about it? Well, make sure you're only looking at the minor portion of this, but it says when the ability fails to critically strike, you have a high chance to gain Reckless Force. When this gets to 20, your critical strike goes up by 70% for 4 seconds. 4 seconds is almost 3 globals, really, I think, can fit in that window. And that's insane. Plus 70%, and then you're using Blood of the Enemy, you're basically guaranteed 100% crit chance, and doing plus 25% crit damage. That's insane, especially for Ellie, which has increased crit damage baseline. So that's very strong. It doesn't take that long to ramp up, and it can ramp up off your flame shocks on multiple targets. So as a kind of a, not really a dot class, but one of our abilities being a dot, this can ramp up fairly quickly. Now, Conflict and Strife, this is your spells and abilities have a chance to increase versatility, which is great. And being a victim of loss of control, like a stun, or any CC, or movement impairing, meaning if anyone tries to slow you, you will get a stack of this buff. So you're going to be getting 5 versatility, and that's going to stack up to 8 times, which is plus 40 versatility, which is pretty dang good. Now, Memory of Lucid Dreams is one that is a little strange. I think it varies depending on the class, but basically when you're doing damage with your spenders, you can't really read this, but when you're doing damage with your spenders, you have a chance to potentially refund 50% of the cost of that ability, but also heal you for a chunk. I'm seeing rogues heal for a lot, but and it also gives you versatility. I'm seeing rogues heal for a lot. I'm seeing certain classes heal from a lot. I haven't seen too much benefit myself, but I have not really concluded my testing on that, so it is something to kind of just look out for a lot. You'll see a lot of classes be using it. Maybe try it out and see, because you do have that extra secondary slot. Onto the talents. Really, this will be the core build for Elemental Shaman. It's going to be going Earthen Rage for that passive damage that can be happening when you're CC'd, can be happening if you're lassoing a lot of things. Totem Mastery, that's going to be consistent damage to your Flame Shock, which is always your #1 damage. It's going to be generating Maelstrom, which is critical, and that'll be useful in general for many things while you're on the move, while you're doing anything else in the game. It's giving you that value. Earth Shield, this is going to be healing for a lot because Pack Spirit was recently nerfed. You're not going to go Spirit Wolf as much, maybe on openers for RMP, but really Earthen Shield is going to be providing a lot of healing for you. Next, Master of the Elements is by default. It's doing the ability you cast after a Lava Burst is going to do 20% more damage. Critical for getting those Earth Shocks up there. Nature's Guardian, that's when your health is brought down below 35%. You get healed, default. And then you're going to probably be switching. This row could be really any of these. Primal Elementalist is really probably going to be your baseline. It's going to be, you get 2 defensive cooldowns. You also get Meteor from the Fire Ellie, and the Fire Ellie does so much damage. Fire Elemental does benefit from Blood of the Enemy, by the way. So that is something to keep in mind. He can do so much damage during that burst. So that's one option. Second is Surge of Power, more of the caster sling, lightning bolt method here. This could do a lot of damage as well, but you won't get that defensive capability from Primal Elementalist, so you need to keep that in mind. Now, Stormkeeper is the default pick. It's the only one on this tier that's really that viable. So that's that. So really the build's going to be switching between these two things. I'm going to be testing this out. I think Surge of Power could be insane while Blood of the Enemy is still as nuts as it is. Now for your PvP talents, Sky Fury will be default. Lightning Lasso will be default. Now what will change now is Grounding Totem. Because the Malediction Trinket has been nerfed, no one's using it. And because no one's using it, there's not always something to ground. Usually you would take this last season no matter what, and you would ground Malediction Trinkets. You get value no matter what. If you're going against certain teams now, there's not necessarily going to be value from this. This could, soak kicks, soak CC, all that stuff, but it depends on your composition you're going against. This will likely be swapped out for potentially Spectral Recovery if you want that 110 movement speed to kite away from melee. Potentially, I like Traveling Storms against Windwalkers, can be pretty useful to line up against their Fist of Furies. Elemental Attunement may come back with being able to spam Earth Shocks. But Purifying Waters is definitely a good option against Resto Druids to keep your healing up. Swelling Waves is also viable against double casters when you're able to cast a lot and you're able to line of sight and heal yourself. This could give a lot of value. So this is going to change a lot, but you probably will be taking grounding a bunch, but it's just now other ones are opened up. So it's something to think about. And it's actually, I'm glad this is the case because we're going to be able to try new things out. So that's pretty much it for the talents and PvP talents. If you want to know more, if you want to get a deeper dive of my thoughts of all the talents, let me know in the comments, ask the questions, and request another video. I'd be happy to go through every single talent and break it down. It's also on Icy Veins. I've broken down every single one of the talents, so make sure to check it out there. All right, let's keep moving on. Next, Trinkets. Now, Trinkets, this is actually a really big deal. This can constitute a ton of your damage, either passively or on use trinkets. These are very powerful. Now, let's just kind of go through them because many of them, if not all of them, are pretty much PvE oriented, and that's how you get them. So let's go ahead and just walk through them. I have some of these. I don't even have all these. Now, Crucible of Storms. This is a trinket called Harbinger's Inscrutable Will. Now, to be honest with you, this is a pretty nuts trinket. It does so much damage. Basically, on chance on one of your abilities to cast out a spear, the spear travels through the air, hitting for up to 30k on targets, and but then it reflects back at you, and if you get hit by the shards, you get silenced for 1.5 seconds. It's actually a very annoying trinket to use, but I use it and it does so much damage. Overall damage, it's increasing your damage by 8% plus, so it is very strong here, especially when you get the higher item levels of it. But that is from Crucible of Storms. Now, there is an inscription trinket that is new in 8.2, Highborn Compendium of the Storms. This is very good, increasing base int, and then also your abilities have a chance to send a typhoon at the target, doing some damage. This actually procs a lot. You'll see it happen a lot, especially if you're keeping your flame shocks up, but it also grants you haste, and that just stacks up, and you kind of roll with it. And this is something that is always up. The uptime of the haste buff is close to 90% in some arenas. So it is very useful. Now, then going down to the bottom right, the Revered Rustbolt. Oh man, the red card. So this red card goes into your Rustbolt trinket. If you ever go to Mechagon, you'll definitely get the trinket with the 3 sockets. This is the red one that comes from being revered with the Rustbolt. Now, this is a on use, channeling a beam into the target. This in over 2.2 seconds. This does a ton of damage. This is very, very, very strong in PvE and PvP, doing 60k, 70k, 80k plus. I mean, I wonder if it would be affected by Blood of the Enemy, but it's just very, very strong. I recommend getting this if you're doing all your dailies and all that stuff. Now, down to the bottom middle, the second boss of Eternal Palace can drop Leviathan's Lure. Now, this is similar to Harbinger's, to be honest, almost way better because it does damage to the target and it's physical damage, which is probably a good thing, I think. And dealing damage also cultivates luminous algae on the target, increasing the chance to summon. So this is just going to be something exactly like the Harbingers, and to be honest, it's going to be way better because it doesn't have a chance to silence you. Now, for Alchemy Sticky Ricky, shout out to you for showing me this. There's a trinket that has baseline a ton of versatility. It also has a prismatic socket, which means you can get 60 more verse. And it also has a passive proc, which can give you 2,000 int, which is a ton of int. So if you want an easy way to get a good trinket, this is definitely a great option. It procs a ton of int, and if you line up that int proc with your damage, you're going to be pumping a lot. So that's there too. Another trinket is probably just the PvP badge, where that's on its verse on use int. That will also be good, but these are ones from PvE I wanted to call out because they're not just the default PvP selection. Let's go into how to do damage as an elemental shaman. One of the key things to do as an LA that I don't necessarily see everyone do is keeping up flame shock on as many targets as you can. So if this was an arena, I'd keep flame shock on this target, and you want to keep lava burst on cooldown. So I can earth strike, that's fine. But you want to be casting, you know, always be casting is another shaman thing and a caster thing as well. So I want to be casting. Okay, flame shock, stop. I want to find another target and put it on another target. That's going to give me more procs. I'm able to generate more maelstrom. I'm able to keep the ball rolling. Oh, I can flame shocks back up. Find another target. In an arena, it can be pets. In a BG, it can be healers. It can be pets. It can be DPS. It can be extra targets, whatever. Now I'm going to cast. Okay, flame shock there. Now I'm getting so many procs. I have 3 going. Proc, proc, proc. I earth shock. Now I'm going to go to lightning bolt. Oh, and another proc. Now I can put flame shock back up. The cooldown's up. And now I have 3. Oh, there's another proc. another Earth Shock. So like this is what you want to be doing. This keeps you high octane, pressing that Lava Burst button a lot. Oh, another target. Now 3 up. Oh, I'm Lava Burst Machine, throwing meatballs. And otherwise you want to be casting. Another big tip that I do not see that many people do, that is a very big suggestion when you are working on doing burst pressure. A big thing is when you're doing a cast, it starts the global cooldown. That means you can't press another button until it's done. Luckily, your cast finishes right as the global cooldown's up, which means you can use an instant cast at the end of your cast to do burst pressure immediately. So this means when I cast a lightning bolt, at the end of that, I could just do lightning bolt, or I could go lightning bolt, and at the end, Earth Shock. That means a lightning bolt and an Earth Shock hit at the exact same time. You want to be using your instant cast at the end of a cast. This forces a lot of pressure. Now you can use this with Lava Burst procs. So for example, I cast a lightning bolt and I Lava Burst at the end. It hits both at the same time. You're getting a lot of pressure up. That's just a key tip. The other thing here is you want to be using Lightning Lasso kind of on cooldown, and also when the diminishing return is down. You want to make sure you're getting the full lasso effect, because now it can crit. It's not affected by haste, but it does stun them for the maximum amount of duration if your stun DR is 0. Now for bursting, the criteria and the conditions to burst are really simple. First of all, you need above 80 Maelstrom. And you want to be having up to, and really you want to be at 20 Lava Shock stacks. This is your kind of your setup. You want to have all your other cooldowns ready. You don't want to be, waiting for your Azerite Essence or anything like that. You want to be all ready with your Stormkeeper and your Sky Fury, etc. So the way you want to open is you want to use your Sky Fury and your Stormkeeper first. You want to get those out, and that's kind of your prep. Now you're ready to go. Now you want to get a Lava Burst off to get yourself that Master of the Elements proc. Then you want to use your Essence into Lasso. And what's key here is you want to make sure you will not get kicked on your Lasso, because you need to Earth Shock afterwards. So you want to use Lava Burst, your Essence, Lasso if you can. And then at the end of Lasso, you want to use that big Earth Shock. That Earth Shock will be the 20 Lava Shock stacked version. It will also be plus 20% damage from Master of the Elements, and that's the one that's going to hit for a ton. Now, you can also pair that if you're running Primal Elementalist with your Fire Ellie right before this as well. You want to whip him out, and then you want to be using Meteor. On the same global you use your Earth Shock, that's going to be adding another 20k damage to that GCD3 there. Then after that, because you already did prep your Stormkeeper, you want to unleash hell by using your lightning bolts. You want to Earth Shock, lightning bolt, and then if you have enough Maelstrom again, you want to Earth Shock, lightning bolt. And that will do the maximum amount of pressure possible. And something else to note here is those lightning bolts after Earth Shock, if you're running Surge of Power, will proc additional overloaded lightning bolts. Now this will just force additional pressure, and hopefully those are going to crit. That'll do devastating damage. Now let me kind of run through it again from start to end to make sure that it's kind of a fluid. What you want to do is you want to prep Stormkeeper and Sky Fury. You want to use one Lava Burst to get that 20% buff. You want to drop that Essence on the enemy. Drop Lasso, get the full duration if possible. Earth Shock with a Meteor, and then Lightning Bolt. And then you want to Earth Shock again and Lightning Bolt. And with this burst, you should be pumping out a serious amount of damage. Now, of course, this is a lot of globals. Now, if you do need to cut some stuff out, I totally understand. And, you won't get a perfect setup every time. For example, if you know they have an interrupt, guess what they can't interrupt? Earth Shock and an instant cast Lightning Bolt. So if you need to use Essence and then Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt, Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt, and then Lasso, do it. Lasso, when you're using Lasso, people are pooping their pants, okay? They're going to be trying to stop you. And if you get interrupted on Lasso, it may waste a lot of your Stormkeeper, and it will lock you out from being able to use Earth Shock and Lightning Bolt. So it is risky business, but you just need to make sure you're not going to get kicked. So that's pretty critical. So let's go ahead and see that in action. All right, guys, now let's do the burst rotation. If you want to see anything about my UI, there's a UI video in the description. These are the spells I'm pressing. Here's the spec that I am, and that's that. Let's go ahead and get this show going. All right, we're going to make sure we have the Master of the Elements up. Okay, we're going to use Stormkeeper, Sky Fury. We're going to use the Azerite Trait. We're going to use Lasso. We still have that Master of the Elements. At the end of Lasso, we're going to Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt, and then we might need to Lava Burst again, Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt. And that is the full rotation, and it's doing, it said 36k, but again, it's a PvP dummy, but that's that. It's going to do a ton of damage, especially with Surge of Power locked in. Now, what you might find is that lining up all those things may not be quite, I don't know, possible every time, because that is a lot of globals. If you need to do something else, you can maybe even get enough Maelstrom to at least do an Earth Shock with a Lightning Lasso. That combination is still very strong. So giving it a full lasso, and then using the Earth Shock at the very end, lining up all that damage, that burst right away is very strong. The other thing you can do is do the Stormkeeper combo, Earth Shock, Stormkeeper, and then get back up, and then Earth Shock, Stormkeeper, without necessarily including the lasso, because that does take some time. So that's just something else to think about. But getting all that stuff lined up can be pretty huge damage. You can also leave lasso till the end as well. That's something else you can do. So instead of lassoing at the beginning, you can go, okay, Sky Fury, do Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt, Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt, lasso at the end, and hold them in place. This should do a ton of damage, especially with crits off of this. So even if you can't line everything up together, you know, with Blood of the Enemy being a 1.5 minute cooldown at rank 3, it doesn't quite line up with Stormkeeper and Lasso, but maybe you can get mini goes in between there. But that's pretty much the highest burst that you can possibly do. The other thing to note too is if you are going Primal Elementalist, let's just quickly show that when you get out of combat. What you'll want to do too is you want to get up to, let me get back up to 60 Maelstrom. Similar type offensive that I can do is I can bring out Flame Ellie, Sky Fury, and then I can go ahead and do the lasso, and then at the end of the lasso, we'll use Meteor and Earth Shock at the same time. We use it. I canceled it early. You can cancel Lightning Lasso by using the pet Meteor. You don't want to do that. You want to use it at the very end. So you want to use Earth Shock with the pet Meteor at the end of Lasso. That's what I just did. Pretty devastating. This kid's doing increased damage. He's pretty nuts. This guy's pretty beefzilla. I'm just saying. So that's pretty much how you burst, guys. There's a few little ways to do it, but there's one max setup that you can be doing, and I definitely recommend, if you're running Blood of the Enemy, to be using that right before you go for that big Earth Shock crit with the Lava Shock traits. Oh, and one other thing, if you are using Ice Fury, you know, some people prefer it. That's fine if your name's Piff. You can go ahead and use that. The way I would recommend doing it is if you are keeping your Flame Shocks up, you would want to, you know, use this. It generates a ton of Maelstrom, which is awesome. But you want to be Lava Bursting before you're Frost Shocking. If you can weave those together, that's optimal. Not necessarily the best thing to do, but if you can Lava Burst, you know, Lava Burst, then use Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Frost Shock. It does span out your globals a little bit, but it would be optimal damage. So something to think about, because it will increase that damage by 20%. But yeah, guys. All right. So I think we've pretty much gone over everything. If you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'm happy to make more videos. You guys know that I love checking out different builds as Ellie. You guys know that I do like Control of Lava. It's the sleeper build, I'm just saying. But that's about it. So guys, if you have any other questions, put it down in the comments. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on the stream on Twitch and YouTube at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard every day except for Saturdays. And with that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for the support. You guys are the best. Let's keep pumping. Ellie is insane right now. Let's freaking do this.
Put a glass box around her and she'll break the glass. If you try to cage her in, she'll light the match. Oh, she's like an animal.